Hello and welcome to episode 228 of The Crate and Crowbar. It is the 27th of February 2018. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
And Tom Francis.
Hello.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's nice to be back on the pod.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You know what I really like is the way the voices in, moving quickly onto Subnautica, vehicles in Subnautica welcome you with robot voices, and different robot voices, and they all get it slightly wrong. They all sound, like the intonation, they say, welcome aboard, Captain.
Yeah.
Like the stress is on the wrong word.
It's a little bit clipped.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Yeah, they're all the spy from twist ending to Subnautica. Sorry, spoilers. Yeah, I guess it's been a while since Tom Senior and I have done this.
It does feel a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It does feel a while, hasn't it? Not even grammar.
Tom F, Alex and Pip show for a while.
Yeah. Which will return because it's proved very popular.
We weirdly, often, ones with Alex on have been the ones where I'm the most drunk. And Alex is usually not drinking at all, which should be awful for Alex, and you'd expect him to be like, just sitting there wishing it was over. But often he's also one of the loudest people on those podcasts.
It's because I think, I think maybe that's Alex's passive or something. Like he kind of benefits from the ambient drunkenness of everybody else. Or he's just a profoundly silly man.
He's like, who was the main character in Heroes? Who like, he could empathically get the powers from other heroes nearby.
Is it Peter Petrelli? Yeah. Is that guy's name?
Right.
Why do I remember that?
And the bad one was Sylar, who he stole powers, didn't he? So he got the power,
he ate a small piece of someone's brain. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Peter could like share them in a nice sherry way.
Yes, exactly.
That's Alex. He can share drunkenness in a nice sherry way. Yeah. There must be a dark Alex out there who can just steal drunkenness through your brain and it kills you.
I enjoyed Sylar's evil arc and his origin story, which was, my dad was bad and a clockmaker, and now I eat brains. And there's almost no connection between those two.
So there you have it.
I watched all of Heroes, I think, for a long time after it started, and I know that doesn't make any sense, but I said it. And there's definitely that show is definitely what happens when people who half remember different bits of different quite famous 1980s gritty comic books kind of string them together. So it's like, my dad was a watchmaker, a bit like in Watchmen. But I ate the brains now. We've introduced a time traveling man who can fix almost anything at any time.
Oops. He's not gonna. Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That show just became like, early on, there was a couple of times where you think like, why don't they just use the power that they're known for? Like the one thing that they're known for. And then as it went on, that was just like every moment of why didn't he use his power? Why didn't he use his power? Why didn't she use her power? Why didn't this person, like, all of these problems are solvable by the very powers that makes these people remarkable in the first place.
You say that the meta of that show was so flawed. Like, they need like a video game designer to go in there and sort of balance the powers out. You know what I mean? Like, so the plot could survive into the second season.
That's an amazing attempt to wrangle this back.
I was desperately trying, Chris. Try so hard.
Look, we're going to have to break it to people that this is becoming a mid-noughties bad sci-fi show critique podcast, but we have to find some way to jettison all of our Patreon backers, and that's the approach we've chosen to take. So,
what about that ending of Lost, huh?
Oh boy, don't get me started. Really, don't get me started. So talking about anything else, talking about computer games news. There was, so we're going to zoom in on two stories, one of which is simply the release of a game that everyone likes. But the first one was the release of a game by accident, apparently, that nobody likes.
Hunt Down The Freeman, which is a game, it's a Half-Life game that is released on Steam, so therefore presumably with Valve's approval. But they seem quite lax about that. They don't seem to be, I wouldn't take that as like Valve's saying, yeah, this is great. And the first I heard of it was I was watching a video the other day from Half-Life News Network, and in the related vids, it just was, the thumbnail for the video was just like, remember everyone, don't buy Hunt the Freeman. And I'd never heard of it before then. And then I heard that it came out and, that it had a bad critical reception and that the developers, did a post sort of apologizing for the launch. But also saying they were pushed into it because they were being harassed. I'm not sure why or by whom. And then also in the same post, they claim that the version they released is not the version they meant to release. and that they're working on a massive update. But those two things don't quite jibe. Like, it is, having released games on Steam, I can see how you could accidentally deploy the wrong version. Like, you should be checking, obviously, before you make it live for everybody. But, you compile your game to like an executable, and stuff, and then you use Steam's deploy tool, and your content has to be in a certain folder. And before you put the new version there, the old version is there. So, if you ran it with forgetting to put the new version in, you'd deploy the old version. But that wouldn't explain why it's going to take time to make a patch. Like, we've got to work on this patch to update it to the version that we should have launched. Why don't you have the version you should have launched? If you're saying like the version you thought you launched is not the one you launched, where is the version you thought you launched? Do you not have it at all? Like,
well, the thing is, Tom, right? So I had the version that was finished, but then my printer was broken, so I had to put that on a USB stick, but then accidentally emailed the old version of the file. And then unfortunately the USB stick was in the other bag, and I don't have that one with me.
My sister took it.
Yeah, it's in her bag,
and
and she goes to a different school in Canada. And anyway, so I could probably get it tomorrow.
It's a strange explanation and a strange excuse.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you don't like this. We don't either. And we accidentally released it.
And anyway, we have a good version, but we can't give it to you yet. The concept sounds cool. It's like a first person Half-Life type game, but you are the bad guys from Half-Life trying to kill Gordon Freeman. And I guess most of it involves probably fighting aliens instead, because just one Gordon Freeman would not really make for much of a campaign.
It'd be very funny. Pretty much hitting everything with crowbars, just invincible.
Why is he so good with a fucking crowbar?
Yeah, I'm just doing lunge jumps and fleeing.
Bunny hopping.
Yeah.
Flying backwards over walls.
Actually, that sounds infuriating. Like, it effortlessly shooting you in the head every time he turns a corner. It's not really news so much as just, it's funny that happened.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
It's news that anyone would make that their excuse.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yes. The game that's come out that everyone likes is Into the Breach, which is out today, and they did not release the wrong version, or if they did, it's very good.
Holy crap.
Yeah. They could have released the version I was playing last year and it would have been fine.
Yeah, totally.
So I appreciate that we've talked about Into the Breach a bunch, although I've finally now played it, but we should probably explain what it is for the benefit of people who, for some reason, don't know.
Yep. It's a turn-based, tactical game where you play as 3 mechs fighting kaiju, giant alien insects, on a very small battlefield, 8x8 squares. And your objective is to stop the Vec from, destroying the city, like buildings that are around. You do that by, doing enough damage to kill them.
Just shoving wasps.
But,
that's how you do it.
Also, a lot of your attacks have can push them. So you're trying to push them so that instead of attacking the building, they're actually going to attack their own friends, or they're going to fall in the sea.
Once they're committed to doing a thing, they can't not do that thing.
That's the clever thing, is that, before they actually do any attacks, you are warned exactly where they're going to attack, and then you have your whole turn to do something about it, including pushing them around, and that can lead to hilarious consequences.
But those consequences are quite fair feeling. Although, it's interesting because I've definitely had a very sort of stop-start learning curve with it so far. I've been through one life in that I have played through to the point where you lose and you travel back in time and you start over with one of your pilots. And then I played a whole island into my second run, which I appreciate is super early days. But a lot of my first run was doing things I didn't realize at the time were mistakes. And and I think obviously the format, the kind of, you fail, you take your best pilot back to the past, you try again, structure of the game means that it doesn't feel bad. It's not like XCOM where you're starting you feel like you're starting from scratch and watching cutscenes again because you just didn't understand something fundamental about how the game works. But I definitely have been mostly learning by making unexpected errors. I didn't realize that this knockback would kill me, or I didn't realize I can't shoot in this way, or that kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's, it tries to show you what will happen when you do, a certain action before you do it. but the information it's trying to convey is so complex. there are so many potential consequences for doing something that it's, even with all their visualizations of this guy's going to get knocked back, he's going to deal 1 damage to this and also 1 damage to himself, and that's going to mean this happens. It's such a difficult thing to convey that even with all their very good interface, for doing that, it's sometimes imperfect. Sometimes, I just had things like, I don't know, I set fire to the train.
That's an Adele song, isn't it?
It should be.
Sorry.
And the reason was, I did it experimentally. It was an experiment, honestly, sir.
Yeah, lethal experiments on your own things are definitely...
Because there are rules like you can set fire to the ground beneath a building, and that doesn't hurt the building in any way. It's absolutely fine. And the train, admittedly, is not a building, but I didn't know exactly how it counted. Like, is it a mech like us? Is it, treated like a building? Is it treated like this? And my way of telling was like, well, I have a reset. You only get 1 reset per battle, which means you can just take back.
Shit, you have a reset. That would have definitely saved 1 life.
So you can only use it once per battle, but as long as you haven't committed your turn yet, you can undo all the things you've done on that turn. And I tested by setting fire to the tile, and my experience has been if you set fire to the tile beneath a VEC, you see flame on the VEC itself. And that tells you the VEC is burning. If you set fire to the ground underneath the building doesn't have any flame effect on it, just the ground does. And that means it's not burning. So I set fire to the ground beneath the train. There was no flame effect on the train itself. So I thought, okay, fine, I can commit this turn, because the damage doesn't happen until after you commit the turn. Then I committed the turn, then the train took 1 damage, which destroys the train. And that was the end of that objective. I've also, on my latest run, I've had a completely fair fuck up, but one where like my mistake was so small and the consequences were so huge that I still feel sore about it. Like it is my fault. I knew all the rules. Well, I knew most of the rules, and the rule I didn't know, I would have been able to guess if he'd asked me, hey, do you think this would happen? I would say, oh yeah, shit, it probably does. And it's, the game has loads of optional objectives and 2 on every mission. And this one is a special scenario where there is a disposal unit on the map, and it can fire like a big blob of acid that destroys everything on 4 tiles. And you can do that every turn. And your sub-objective is to destroy all the mountains on the map. And the mountains are clustered such that I could do that in 2 shots. Like, this shot will destroy that set of mountains, this shot will destroy that set of mountains. The battle is 4 or 5 turns long. So I have 2 to 3 whole turns that I can use this just to kill enemies with, which is great. And the first turn, huge number of enemies, like 6 enemies, all clustered, all really, really high health enemies, clustered in this one little place. I thought, fuck it, this is the prime time to kill enemies with this. I'm not going to get a chance like this again. Killed enemies with it. Knowing I would have all these spare turns to kill the mountains later, destroy the mountains. And only 2 enemies left. And those 2 enemies, I just mop them up by like having my rocket guy fire at them, and then, this other unit hit them. And my rocket guy happened to be standing right in front of the, disposal unit when he fired, and killed the enemy. Everything was fine, committed my turn. Only after that did I remember that the, rocket guy emits smoke behind him when he fires. And he was standing right in front of the disposal unit. And disposal unit, turns out, like any mech or any other unit, can't attack when it's in smoke.
Oh no.
Unlike any other mech or any other attack unit, it can't move. So it can't leave the smoke ever. So it could just never fire again. And so I just couldn't use it to destroy any of the mountains. And I failed that objective. It was surreal too, because it did such a good job of killing the enemies, and also I killed the rest of the enemies, that the rest of the battle was just empty. Like, a couple would spawn, but every time it's pitifully easy to destroy them. But I just can't do the objective. There's no way.
How are you finding it, Tom?
I'm pretty similar to you, Chris, that I've only done a few resets. In my early plays with it, I've had the same thing where you sort of, the game does tell you everything, but for you to actually absorb that information just takes some trial and error.
Yeah.
Just doing it over again.
I think we talked about on the podcast before that like tooltips are probably the worst way to ever impart information in a video game. Like I almost refuse to look at them. And so like you can hold like left control to get information on any enemy type, which is very useful. You hold left alt to see what things are likely to happen. The game showed me both of these features, and it's not even a particularly UI heavy game, but my brain and eyes just rebelled immediately. Like, not reading this.
Yeah, it's definitely a game about applied knowledge, isn't it? When you actually see your units dealing with a specific type of damage, that's when you realise what you can kind of do in combination. And it took me ages to, like, again, it's my own fault. I always feel like it's my own fault with Into the Breach, because there's no excuse. There's just no, as a player, there's no excuse for not knowing why a thing has happened, really. You should have just paid attention to a certain tooltip or a certain effect or something. But just learning that the dudes with a tail, they do damage 1 or 2 squares away. The dudes who don't have a tail, they do direct line damage that will go across the entire map unless you block it or shift them off course. That just takes learning. Because like, I find that a lot of the unit design visually doesn't really reflect what they do terribly well.
Yeah.
So that just takes some rote learning.
And also, a lot of them I would classify as beetle. There are like 3 different things I would call a beetle.
There is an enemy called the beetle, but like fundamentally.
But there's also one called the scarab, which to me looks more like what I would typically think of as a beetle. And then there's one that is called a firefly, but I would also think of as a beetle.
Yeah, so for example, I would expect the thing with a tail that looks like it might shoot stuff to be the thing that shoots bolts across the map, and the thing which doesn't have a tail that has claws would be the thing that does close combat damage. But there's a little bit of just what I assume based on the visual depiction of the units isn't quite accurate.
You also have to learn things like the scorpions web things.
Right.
So every time they attack anything, they web it as well. So if they're attacking a building, doesn't make any difference. But if they're attacking you, it means you kind of have to deal with it, or you can't use that mech. And so once you know that, when you're looking at like the first set of enemies, you might want to prioritize those guys and destroy them first.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Also, I've done like 3 or 4 kind of restarts, and starting to actually get close to beating an island, which is kind of, really like the way the game is chunked in terms of these little islands and once you kind of beat an island, it seems like you can cash in all the stars you've earned to actually kind of start upgrading your squad. But I find that it's, in that little run up to that point, it's very hard to get on the upgrade track at all. So it's really hard to get experience on your units to actually get like extra health or extra damage on your guys. So it feels like a bit of a sprint so far, the first bit. And there's loads of stuff I'm enjoying about the game, but these are the problems I've run into just immediately with it, is that I'd like one upgrade on a unit pretty much guaranteed after a couple of fights.
Yeah, it's interesting. They intentionally don't do that. So I think on the first island, I think it's possible to get a time pod, which contains a reactor core that you can use to upgrade yourself. But on the later islands, there are sectors which, by doing this mission, you earn you earn a reactor core just as part of the reward. And that never happens on the first island.
Yeah.
Which, is intentional. I think because they don't want to overwhelm you with choices or something if you're a new player. But for me, I always want the options to come as soon as possible in a roguelike. Like when I start my run, as soon as possible, I want something to happen that hasn't happened before. And having upgrades is just one way of doing that. You know, I can put a point here that I've never tried this upgrade before.
Yeah.
But
especially if you're,
they hold off on that on the first island. So the first island is pretty similar with the same squad.
But I can imagine that's the bit that most players are going to repeat the most before they give up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's not a decision I entirely agree with.
So that's pretty much the only friction I've had with it so far, though. Like, I think it's astonishing how much dynamism they managed to put into this small grid. So, I wasn't prepared for the way maps would change. So there are maps where tides come in and start to slowly eliminate the map. Yeah. And it gets smaller and smaller, and that changes how effective your units are and how effective the enemy is as well. Like, it pushes them into dangerous situations. There's a mission I love where you smash a dam, and it just sends a river going right through the middle of the map. And that is just, it's such a joy to see that happen, just like destroy a load of enemies, and it really messes up the Vex plans because most of them can't go across the water.
I've been watching Let's Players play it, like YouTubers and stuff, and which is great because I've, been playing this game myself for ages, but I have no idea how anyone else plays it. And then I thought, brilliant, I get to watch other people play it and see how they do it. And then I've watched that damn mission so many times, I'm like, shoot the fucking, like, all these problems you're trying to solve will go away if you break the dam. All these things will drown. Shoot the dam.
I did exactly the same thing though. Like, the game gives you all the information. It said, the game says, look, shoot the fucking dam. That's why you're here. That's the whole thing. I'm like, I don't want to break a dam. People die when dams break. That just is like I want to destroy that infrastructure. Like, instinctively, I feel like, oh, that's like a thing that should be protected. Normally in games, I'm protecting dams, and you're protecting all these human buildings. So suddenly you'll be asked to destroy a human building, and it's like, oh, well, that's not going to help. But the first time you do it, it's like, okay, the next time I'm sending my big punchy guy right up to that dam. I'm just getting it down straight away, big river across the map, and the rest of the mission is going to be a pleasure. They
have a few objectives that are just really counterintuitive. So one is, it says terraform, terraform the desert with I can't remember how they phrase it, but like terraform all the land or something. And you start with a terraform in the middle and a few bits of like green grass and some barren desert. And so, this is a early version. This isn't true in the final thing, but, I played that and I tried to I fired the terraformer at the desert to try and turn it into grass, and that does nothing. You have to fire it at the grass to turn it into desert. Like your objective is to make it desert.
Right.
Yeah. Fuck the grass.
And they've since updated that tooltip, so it says like terraform the grassland back to desert, just to be specific about it. But it's a counterintuitive objective. Like, what's wrong with the grass? Can't we have the grass?
Yeah.
I think the economy of it, the way you buy upgrades and things, really reminds me of FTL. Like more than anything else, that's the thing that really reminds me the most of FTL. Not just because the shop looks the same and the currencies look the same.
Yeah.
But because my most recent run, I was pretty good about you have the grid, and the grid is your health bar, basically, for the world. And some missions, you pick which missions you're going to do, and you always start with like a couple of blocks of damage to the grid, which I like actually as a little touch, because it means that repairing the grid is like a direction you can choose to go at the start versus other kinds of objectives, rather than your health bar simply being something that will always go down. Like until you have to start fixing it.
And actually, even when it's full, if you then earn grid points, they increase your grid resistance rate.
Yeah.
So you can make your grid kind of more resistant to future damage, like a better chance to resist.
Which is cool. That works for me. Yeah. And I spent basically the first island, always going for the grid up things and getting the grid basically maxed. And then on the final mission, of the island fighting the boss, I just did something dumb. Like it was a total, like it was, early days of the game, just experimenting, but I just went all in on killing the boss as fast as possible, which meant kinda ignoring some of the other monsters. And also like, if to kill the boss, I have to punch him into a skyscraper. Oh well. And in doing that, I won the mission, but I managed to get the grid down to 1 health.
Oh my god.
Like on that mission. And so all of the currency, it's like corporation points, basically.
Yeah.
You get
reputation
points from that entire island. When you get the shop at the end of the island, I dumped into repairing the grid. Mm-hmm. And repairing the grid is the cheapest thing. It costs 1 reputation.
Yep. Okay.
And it reminds me so much of repairing the ship in FTL.
Yeah.
Where like, how you'd have that thing in FTL where it was never enough to get to a shop with loads of resources. You had to get to the shop with loads of resources and a ship that badly didn't need fuel or repairs.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you couldn't really justify buying the new laser or whatever you wanted, right? That rhythm feels a lot like FTL to me. Just the fact that your resources can kind of buy you out of a bad series of decisions, but doing so means, again, you're not getting access to the toys, because the shop has like cool upgrades for your mechs, and you can buy reactor cores, which allows you to unlock the specific mech upgrades and things.
There's a funny little consequence of that shop system where you earn reputation on an island, you can only spend it at the end of the island, and any unspent reputation is just lost when you leave the island, because it's only rep with that faction, and when you go to another island, you're working for a different faction, and that rep doesn't count. And so if you only rep left over, and you don't need the grid strength, you should just buy something you don't want, because next island you can sell it for rep, and so you get that money back.
Right.
You can sort of,
I guess you could also keep putting points in the grid, couldn't you?
yeah, you could just overcharge it, yeah.
Yeah.
I almost never pay to repair the grid. I will always go for, even if I'm really close to, maybe if I had 1 health, I might put a couple of points into the grid, but, I would usually go for tools and then on the next island, choose the missions that reward grid strength and just kind of hope I don't fuck up too badly. Because sometimes like the thing you buy for your rep is the tool that allows you to avoid any grid damage on the next thing. Like, because you have that, you don't have to take that hit, and therefore when you're rewarded with even one grid power, it's a net win, and you can kind of work your way back up to health.
There's nothing more annoying than realizing on the final turn of a game that's of a mission that's going to earn you 1 grid point, realizing there's nothing you can do to stop a fucking wasp hitting a building. Yeah. And like, it's a net even.
Yeah.
I think the idea of the power grid is basically the health bar for your campaign is absolutely spectacularly good. It's so clever, because the lower it gets, the more the more energy you devote to diverting monsters away from buildings. So it changes the way you actually approach scenarios as well. And you start thinking about whether you want to sacrifice sub-objectives just to protect buildings, that kind of thing. And it's really clever and it's really clear once you've played through a couple of rounds, what's at stake with the grid and with objectives.
It's funny. I think it's actually started to not work for me because I've played this enough that I know, if I get every single sub-objective, then as well as having all the rep for doing that, I also get a free gift. Like right at the very end of the island, they just come to you and say, hey, do you want this cool pilot? Do you want this cool weapon? Or do you want some free grid repair? Because you got every objective. And so getting every objective is the only thing I care about. I will take 10 grid damage. I can't take 10, but I'll take like 5 grid damage to get 1 star, if I haven't lost a star yet, because, one weapon or something is not actually that massively valuable, but losing it feels so bad to me. I'm just, as soon as I lose one objective, I'm just like, oh, fuck this whole thing. And because it's a health bar, it's funny. I think if I agree it is a good system, but, if that wasn't your health bar, if something else was, and they just said, please save as many citizens as possible, I might care about it more because once you tell me it's a health bar, I know, oh, that can go down to 1 and I'll be fine. Like that's all I have to worry about. As long as it doesn't go to 0, it's fine. So I just let people die. And, because the stars give me a mechanical reward, I get like new toys. That's my absolute number one priority.
Yeah, it feels like if you have the grid above a certain level and you got a toy, then perhaps that would.
Yeah. I think that'd be cool actually if you get to the end of the.
Yeah, either all the objectives or the grid hasn't taken any damage would be interesting. Like, that's actually kind of interesting to hear because one thing I really like about the objective system is, you have the sub-objectives, but until you just said that, I didn't know there was a specific reason to always want to get all of them. One thing I like about it is, from the UI that this sub-objective will get you a reputation point, this sub-objective will get you a grid point, this sub-objective will get you a reactor core. And so I like the moments where you kind of have to choose between the health of your mechs, the survival of your pilots, the grid, and the objectives. And because, I guess you can meticulously plan every step of every game, but that's not really how I've been playing it. I like the moment where you're like, well, I can't protect the train or whatever. That's going to lose me a reputation point, but I can get all of the kills in this map, which will get me a grid point, which I want more. Yeah. And like that, I like as a way of structuring sub-objectives. I quite like that, like the kind of notion that you pick your reward as you
sacrifice one or the other. Yeah, I've totally had situations like that where I've used my artillery guide to actually nuke one of my own buildings because it would push enemies away from the objective I wanted to preserve. I say, awesome. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take that grid hit to protect this tank because I actually want the star rather than, or I want the, so there are like pods that fall onto the map and you want to claim them and stop them.
Yeah, don't shell them.
Don't shell them. Shell the citizens instead. And
there is actually an achievement for just destroying every time pod you see. Every time you get a time pod, you're just like, no, fuck it, I will kill it.
Don't eat time pods.
I'm loving it. It's really spectacular. I've only got the first team of 3, of course, but just seeing the menu where there are so many different teams.
Yeah, there are 8 squads of 3 unique mechs.
There are all these different possibilities.
They are, my favorite one is the Frozen guys. I can't remember what they're called.
Elsa.
Yeah, it's Elsa. Olaf.
That's what I thought when I nuked that building. Just let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
They're named for their science mech that can, freeze one enemy, but in doing so freezes himself. And when something is frozen, it can't move or act. The next bit of damage it takes, it won't take any actual damage, it will just break the ice.
Okay.
So you are just stuck until something hits you. And the enemies will still attack you, so you can hope that they will do that. But otherwise you've got to use one of your other mechs to knock you out of the ice. So it's a huge drawback, but freezing an enemy has all these interesting benefits. One, it takes it out of the fight. Obviously it can't do anything. But then 2, other enemies will start to attack it in order to try and free it. So you not only save yourself the attack that enemy would have done, you save yourself the attack of the enemy who tries to free it, because there's 2 enemies now who would have been attacking if you hadn't frozen that one. And then, added to that, you could also, free the thing from the ice on the same turn that another enemy is also trying to do that, so that you break the ice and then the enemy just attacks it. And you could free something on top of a spawn point, so that then, it can't move out the way and it blocks the spawn. Blocking the spawn will break the ice, but then it's, that's cool. And then if there's a flying enemy, usually, you can't drown those in water or have them fall off the map. No. But if you freeze them, they're not flying anymore.
Beautiful.
And then the cool thing about the Frozen Squad is that, like, most squads have like a sort of signature unit, like a really special one, and then the others kind of support it in some kind of interesting way. The Frozen team, all of them are mad. There's the one who freezes himself as well as freezing the enemy. Then their prime mech just flips people. He just hits them with a shield, and now they shoot in the opposite direction. So it's all about turning people around, and then their tank shoots in both directions. So she's behind him and ahead.
Can you choose not to do that?
No. You must fire behind you as well.
That's excellent.
It's like,
That's excellent.
yeah, the worst last line of defense.
Yeah. Exactly. Why did we make this tank?
Get behind, get slightly to the side of me. Yeah, and particularly when teamed up with a shield guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really looking forward to playing a little bit more of it. As it only came out today at the time we're recording, so I've only had an hour with it so far. Do you know if they're planning to do an iPad version?
Don't know. They did with FTL, so
Yeah, it's
I
wouldn't be surprised.
I had that feeling immediately. Like, it's great on PC and it runs nicely at a window, and it's kind of a nice sort of just have this open and take a few turns and do a mission kind of game. By which I mean play it all afternoon at the expense of everything else. But
this is the game I played while compiling Heat Signature while I was out in Seattle.
Right.
You know, I would be working on Heat Signature, then as soon as it needed to compile, it would only really take like 1 minute or 2 minutes to compile. And so I just quickly switched on my laptop where into the feature running. I'll just do one turn. That'll take like 1 or 2 minutes. And then like half an hour later, shit, I gotta make my game.
yeah, it's great. Really, I mean, I knew I was gonna like it, so it feels a bit like sort of, it's almost not surprised me by just the fact that it came along and it's like, oh yeah, this is great. But nonetheless. Tom, I believe you have also been moving people around in squares and grids.
I have. Yeah, I think, talking about Into the Breach, we've talked about XCOM as well previously in relation to it.
We're kind of always talking about XCOM, to be
fair.
fair.
It's because it's kind of good. I really like XCOM. But like XCOM and this are just sort of two sides of the same design idea. You've got a grid, you move everything around, and then they get shooting angles on things. They've got sub-objectives to complete. But it's just the philosophies behind the two are just so different that it creates such a different experience. XCOM is about dice rolls. It's about, managing chance across the map, and then finding a way to absorb unfair losses or losses that feel, like they're going to screw you over, finding ways around that, ways to cope with it, both emotionally and also in terms of your resources and stuff. And in that vein, I've played Phoenix Point, which is, Julian Gollop's take on XCOM. Current modern take on XCOM. Julian Gollop, of course, created the original XCOM.
His was the original take on XCOM.
XCOM. The very first one. And it's been weird writing about this game because I feel like I inevitably have to compare it to Firaxis XCOM. Because that's what most audiences are going to know XCOM to be. Obviously not hardcore PC gamers who've been, playing for many years and did play the original. But Jake Solomon and Firaxis is, for me, extraordinary reboots of that idea has become the sort of de facto XCOM idea. It's what people kind of think XCOM is. And so it's interesting to play Phoenix Point where they've borrowed so much from XCOM's, from Firaxis XCOM, and also changed it in subtle ways that make it feel very different. So I played a combat demo, and the classes are very familiar. You've got like sniper guy, you've got heavy gunner guy, you've got a couple of assault guys, but the dice rolls are very, very different. So in XCOM, when you're taking a shot, it gives you a percentage to hit value. And most of the time you either hit or miss. And you can graze, you can sort of hit armor and stuff. For the most part, it's pretty much all or nothing. It's very much an all or nothing game when it comes to your decisions. You take a gamble and either it works or it doesn't, and you're either fucked or you're not, and you have to work around it. And whereas Phoenix Point is actually really different. It models, individual bullets and their chances of hitting. When it presents you with an enemy, it'll tell you the percentage chance to hit, which is generally, based on this demo, much, much, much higher than XCOM. So, probably going to hit. Your percentage chance of, then there's a percentage chance of you just killing them if the weapon does a certain amount of damage. But you can also target individual limbs on an enemy.
Oh my god.
And it gives you another series of percentage chances to disable certain limbs if you want to take out bits of enemies. And enemy specialties are obviously, as it makes sense, tied to the limbs that they have. So, the enemies are kind of weird crab monsters that have come out of the ocean and, that have gun arms or shield arms or claw arms. And you want to blow those off as much as you possibly can. 'Cause, if you shoot off like a gun armed crab, it's just a fucking crab. You just don't have to worry about that anymore. It's, again, the cover system is very similar to XCOM. It's like heavy cover, light cover. The UI is really, really similar because the UI just works in XCOM in terms of, if the yellow outline is, you can run that far and still shoot. The blue light, sorry, it's the other way around. Blue outline, you can run and still shoot.
Yep.
If you go into yellow, then you can run, but you're out of extra actions. That just works. So they've kept that and kind of, so Julian got up saying, okay, the old action point system in original XCOM is fiddly and difficult to kind of visualize, and this visualization is much better, so we'll keep that from your XCOM. But if you round a corner and spot an enemy in Phoenix Point, the action freezes immediately and it will retain all of your movement points at that moment. So you can round a corner and you'll spot an enemy, your guy will stop, and you'll still have that number of movement points left to spend to get back into cover. So this solves a problem that I think Graham especially had with the XCOM reboots, where you can just sort of trigger enemies in XCOM and XCOM 2 and be like super ambushed with them, often in quite ridiculous situations where any ordinary human would be able to see that there's a fucking monster over there.
And that just led to me just like, I'll just move like 4 squares at a time every turn because I can't risk triggering a pod without being in cover.
Because the enemy takes a free turn in XCOM when they're activated or triggered.
They do. They
to some extent.
They get a free scatter. They don't get like a turn.
Yeah, you're right. But that scatter can trigger Overwatch.
Yes,
which means that the most effective way to move is to move everybody forward 1 square, put them all on Overwatch, and then move one other guy forward 2 squares. And repeat this process until that 2 square movement triggers. Because you are essentially missing out on relatively consequence-free damage if you don't get that Overwatch off on that scatter, if that makes sense.
And the Firex's kind of response to that was to give you hurry-up objectives, where there are these things that you like meld that you need to get, and like the whole idea of XCOM is that you're going to lose people all the time. And this is always the kind of friction point, I think, for people who really dislike it and people who enjoy it, is that like people are going to die. That it's going to happen. You're going to have disastrous missions, and it's kind of up to chance. Like it is just a very hardcore dice game, XCOM, and it's about kind of managing that. Whereas it feels like Phoenix Point, there are many more mitigating factors that actually I think will be more appealing to people who dislike the kind of XCOM 2 brutal survivalist thing. It's still a difficult game. It was a difficult mission in particular. So, basically you're going into this, base over a bridge. You make it over the base, and then at some point, an alien queen turns up, and it's the size of a house. It's huge. It's like
also a crab.
Giant house crab. Giant house crab. And it's got like a woman's face.
It's like a domesticated crab you can have around the house.
And it walks through scenery, just destroys any scenery it walks through, and it just slowly, well, not slowly, it's very quick to begin with. It just scutters towards your guys, and anyone it gets up to is gonna slaughter. But because of limb damage, you can target its legs to slowly cripple it, which reduces its movement speed. You can target its claws to reduce its attack. You can target its body to open up weak spots. And then you can use, this is where explosive damage is really good in Phoenix Point, because, a grenade or, anything with area of effect will damage all the limbs that it catches. So the way, Julian got us at my shoulder and says, you probably want to fire rockets to that thing.
Tip.
Julian, I think you're right. It's a good idea. So I kind of like formed a fire base in the corner of the map and had like a couple of assault guys, a sniper and the heavy shoots like shoulder mounted rockets that can kind of go around corners and stuff. You're just blowing up this alien queen that's slowly kind of coming towards you, and it's getting slower and slower and slower each time you cripple a limb. And it ended up like 4 squares away from my guys when I finally just killed it. And it felt like a very different experience to like Fire Axis XCOM. It was a very different type of fight, a very different boss fight. Even though it looks very similar to the Fire Axis games. And I thought it was really, really good. There's loads of stuff they've done with it that I like. Each soldier has a willpower, resource now. And it costs 3 willpower to go on Overwatch, which is like a key point of XCOM. And, but also you can use willpower to perform extraordinary actions. So your assault warriors can use willpower to move, shoot, and then spend willpower to move again. So if you've got an enemy which has like a shield arm, then you want to attack it from the point where the shield arm obviously isn't facing. So you can get a soldier around the side of it, then take a shooting action, and spend willpower to get it back into cover again. And that obviously means it won't be able to Overwatch as effectively for the rest of the fight, but the combat is full of those type of decisions that don't really exist in XCOM. I also really like the status effects. You can inflict bleeding on enemies. Enemies can inflict bleeding on you. You're often hitting enemies and doing like glance damage or crippling certain limbs by chance, especially on reaction shots. So the battlefield is like a really reactive kind of, enemies in your squad degrade as combat goes on in variable ways. In XCOM, an enemy that has 1 health is as effective as it was at max health. That's not true of Phoenix Point, and that's actually a huge thing in an XCOM style tactical game where you can actually take pot shots at guys who are unimportant and disable important parts of them and then forget about them and just sort of concentrate on something else. But if that doesn't work, like it's still that chance there, so you're still sort of reacting to what's happening. Your assault soldiers are being shot at. Every time they get shot at, they take shots back automatically, which is really powerful. If you happen to shoot back at an alien that's shooting at you and you happen to take its gun arm out, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's moments like that actually change your strategy on the fly and kind of create these kind of more adaptive battlefields that are a little bit, ironically, by adding more dice rolls, there's less variance in it, I think, than XCOM. And that's what's so punishing about XCOM is that, well, in this round, all your guys missed. Now you're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
It's going to have to handle that. And I think the game gives you ways of handling that, but it feels less punishing.
If you aim at like a particular limb, is there a chance you'll miss and hit a different limb?
I think it depends on the weapon. And weapons do different types of damage as well. So, different weapons have different penetrative effects. It's much more like simulation-y. It's much more simmy than XCOM. In that if you're, shooting at an enemy with a shield, if you've got a heavy gunner, it might penetrate the shield. If you've got a sniper, it probably will penetrate the shield. But if you're a heavy gunner, it's like scatter shots, you could cripple a different limb as well. Right. Especially on reaction shots. So if, an enemy's attacked one of your assault guys, they spray back. And it could cripple anything. It could hit anything. It could miss completely. But I think, yeah.
It sounds like it would be like hard to communicate all of the ways this could go. Like you target an enemy and it's like, okay, there's a 10% chance all your bullets will hit and you'll kill it. There's a 15% chance you'll hit its left arm and also its bottom right limb and this will happen. But then there's another 22% chance that you'll only graze its torso and its head.
I think that they're definitely still figuring this out, especially the way they display information to you as the player, because the UI has been in constant flux. Like if you see all the screenshots like throughout its development so far, and the build we played at the PC Gaming Weekend had like a different UI again for how it showed like percentage chances of hitting stuff. I think at the moment, like if you target a certain limb, you're just going to hit that limb. But if it's like a spray reaction shot like Overwatch, it could go anywhere. You can't really guarantee that. I think that's how it works in the current build. But like Julian and Gollop was saying that they're still thinking about, for example, with Overwatch, instead of it just being a blanket 360 counter shot, that they're still considering having it be directional and having you point a soldier in a direction and overwatching to a particular point, so that you actually have to choose to lock down certain areas with Overwatch. And they're still like in that stage of experimentation with the system, so it could go in a lot of different ways. But I did really enjoy what I played of it.
Yeah, I think that the more differences they can make between that and XCOM, the more interesting it becomes to me.
Yeah, I completely
agree. Because XCOM is really good. So if you're going to make XCOM, I'd probably just keep playing XCOM.
I think there's stuff on the, I've not seen any of the strategic map yet, but there are 3 human factions who are more kind of, Fireaxe has added extra human factions in the latest expansion to XCOM 2. But it was more of, they've behave like an upgrade tree rather than other factions that you actually kind of have a relationship with, really. So I'd be really interested to see if Phoenix Point could do something different with that and make the other factions more ambiguous and perhaps actually antagonistic in some ways if you don't get on with them.
Do I remember Julian saying something like he felt like the Firaxis XCOM had kind of got the tactical game right, but the strategic game was the one that he thought they hadn't done much on, that he wanted to focus on? Or was it the other way around? Because it sounds like it certainly made changes to the tactical game.
It has, but they have taken a lot from XCOM. I think particularly in presentation. So you're getting those over the shoulder cam shots of things happening. You've got the same kind of like movement UI for it and stuff like that. But yeah, so much depends on also classes and how they develop and what the cool upgrades for those classes are, which I really loved about the Fireaxis XCOM is the fact that, especially after a few expansions, you could get some fucking cool upgrades for your soldiers. You could make some amazing, cool heroes, and that was a big part of the game for me. So we have to see how Phoenix Point handles all that stuff. We've not seen any of the proper overmap stuff.
It's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to BattleTech so much.
Oh, yeah,
actually. Yeah. I mean, because weirdly, like locational damage or like limb damage is a perfect fit for this kind of game.
Yeah.
And traditionally, it's something that has always been a strength of mech games. Like Into the Breach is a mech game, but doesn't have this. Like because it's really like the logic of limb damage and component damage can be really easily expressed in a mech game, whereas in other kinds of games, it's hard to do it realistically. Because, you know, a human being with their arm blown off is probably an incapacitated human being. Yeah. However, you explaining that means actually crabs. Crabs are the perfect organic solution to this. Nature's mech, apparently. In terms of having an enemy that you can readily kind of blow bits off and kind of know what that's going to give you.
Yeah. And I understand that it could probably still walk.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Spiders as well to an extent, but they have less of the kind of, slow readability of a crab. This is how my rating scheme for animals now.
Spiders, like the limb targeting is just, would you like to target leg 1?
Yeah,
leg 2?
So, yeah.
Leg 3? Leg 4?
They all do the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Whereas crabs have specialized limbs.
Yep.
Yes.
The brilliant thing about BattleTech is that the mercenary lifestyle, it sounds like it simulates the idea that you're in it for the buck, right? And you can be betrayed on missions by your employers and stuff like that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. And also actually talking back to Into the Breach, the thing I really liked about BattleTech is the soft fail. Soft fails, which I'm sure I talked about in the pod before, but the fact that, you get paid for the amount of mission you do. And obviously it's much better to finish the mission, but it's not, there's a few different layers to it. So when you agree to take the mission, you adjust a slider between money and scrap for what you want. And money is obviously money, which is always good, fueling and repairing and stuff. Scrap is not an abstract, it's an absolute mechanic. So, you say you can maybe, instead of taking 10,000 credits, you take 4 pieces of scrap. And that simply means you get first pick of any 4 things that fall off mechs in that game, in that mission. So if you go in, if you say, if you know you're going up against a very well-armed opponent, you say, give me maximum scrap rights to this, then you potentially have the ability to get really good stuff super cheap because you blow it off the enemy mech and take it. However, that means then playing in a way where you avoid limb damage. You want then to be like killing every enemy mech with a precision shot to the pilot, to the cockpit, to avoid damaging the stuff that you've just paid, quote unquote, for the right to take. Like that sort of thing I really like as a kind of
that's really cool.
A way. And then both of those rewards are mitigated by how many of the objectives of the mission you actually manage to do. So if you have to pull out to save you the cost of repairing after a mission gone wrong, then maybe you get a quarter or whatever, and you take a reputation hit, something like that. That stuff I really, really like. I'd love to see more games experiment with that.
Kind of a version of that, that sort of salvage consideration in Captain Forever, because it was all modular damage. Like every enemy is made of just guns and hull bits and thrusters and stuff. And they have a cockpit. If you destroy the cockpit, the whole ship is dead. And after it's dead, all of the things that you haven't destroyed yet, you can just take. So, it might have really nasty guns, and the most combat efficient way to do it is to take out the guns so it can't fight back. But then at the end of the fight, you don't get to take those guns. Whereas if you can somehow, snipe the cockpit first, then, you just get to take all its stuff.
Yeah. That's I really love stuff like that. Any mechanic that, that's, I think, the successful way of merging the strategic game and the kind of meta game is having your kind of economic considerations or where you want to go with your upgrades and things like really affect the decisions you make. And it's something that Into the Breach does well, I think, with what we were saying about the sub-objectives, the fact that you end up focusing on the sub-objectives that solve a macro problem for you. It just sounds that maybe offering mega rewards for getting all of them pushes that over into making it feel mandatory rather than allowing it to be this sort of like, how do I make the best of this bad situation? Yeah. Like basically all of these games are basically like best of a bad situation games, right? Like it is like trying to get the best out of, a situation where you're expected to fail a bit, which is, I think, what makes them interesting, because most video games don't approach you in that way. They approach with a view to like, how do you succeed rather than how do you fail upwards?
Yeah, I think I should probably be playing Into the Breach on hard now. Like I've been playing on normal, and some squads are really difficult on normal for me, but the default squad would now be pretty easy for me on normal. So I should probably just start playing on hard and see what squads I can do. And that way, you know, there's no way I'm going to get every objective. It's always going to be like, which thing do I want to lose?
A clean into the breach level is a great feeling.
Yeah.
Already.
I really like when yes, I agree. However, my favorite victories are the ones where you know exactly how much manageable damage you can take. Because obviously your mech damage is repaired at the end of the game.
Yeah, for free.
I had a cool one in my last run where it was a map where a certain number of blocks of the map will vanish or collapse and become ravines every turn. And this ended with a ravine forming across the center of the map, impassable by anything that can't fly. And all of the surviving alien monsters were the ranged beetle guys that fire out of their bombs. And so I was consistently shelling behind them to push them into the ravine, but I could only kind of remove one a turn that way. And obviously my tank can shoot them, but that's not that useful.
Push them away.
Yeah, I can push them away or maybe push them out of line of sight, but I can't, you know, it's just a gunfight across a ravine at that point. And then on the final turn, it'd gone pretty perfectly otherwise. It was sort of, you know, there were two that were going to fire at buildings. I didn't want to take any damage to the buildings, obviously. I could shell one, to push it into the hole. And that works really well. And then the most logical thing to do is to take my toughest mech, the punch guy, who hasn't been doing much for a while because there's a ravine in the way, and just stand him in front of the final bullet.
Totally.
And I really like that as, obviously it's a, you know, it's not a game that necessarily has like a cinematic sense of what's going on because they're the tiniest little kaiju and the tiniest little mechs. I like the flavor stuff in Into the Breach, like when the mechs drop down, you see the little speech bubbles come up like, hey, look. Or when you fuck up and they're like, everyone I know is dead.
I like the guy who says, what was that? Like, 3 mechs landing in space.
He's just woken up. What the fuck's going on? When I killed those, that cluster of enemies with the acid thing that ended up, causing me a huge amount of trouble, you know, I killed like 4 alpha class enemies in one shot and the building next to it just said, whoa.
But I like that, like, the final blow is taken by that mech, and because your mechs are healed between missions, that's like, yeah, I took 1 hit in the entire mission, but it was like at the perfect time and in the perfect way to kind of end with that neatness that I really like. I think maybe that's an unexplored thing. Like in XCOM, being hit is always bad, and most of the time it is in these games, but I like whenever there are things you definitely want to protect, but there are things that you can afford to kind of spend, like the grid in Into the Breach to an extent as well. Like, again, from a design point of view, I really like it when these games allow you to willingly fail a bit in a particular direction because you feel like it's the most manageable thing. That's so much more interesting than save scumming to protect every single one of your resources, whatever form they take.
Yeah.
Tell that to Rich McCormick.
Cool.
What have you been playing, Chris?
I've been playing Mime That I Would Like Some More Whiskey.
Good
so
game.
I've actually,
You've won.
thinking about it, I've also been playing a game with interesting fail states. So there's actually a kind of theme to this episode, which is going to be failing upwards. That's our message for the week. So I've been playing Hunt Showdown, which is, Crytek's new game. I think it was announced at E3 last year, and it's just come out in early access. And I took a bit of gamble, just bought it straight up in early access, in its early access version, out of interest. It is a very experimental multiplayer shooter, kind of thing I like. And I think it's pretty promising. As a kind of experimental, asymmetrical multiplayer shooter that I like, I feel like that might be the death mark. But so it is it's kind of, I've not played anything like it actually, although, I think it's got shades of Killing Floor, Left 4 Dead, Evolve, DayZ, PUBG. It's in somewhere in that mix, but it's very different to all of those things. And it plays very different to all of those things. So so it is a, competitive monster hunting game with a macro sort of a development kind of building up characters element that is probably closer, weirdly, to an XCOM game or something like that than you'd think, given that it's a shooter, first person multiplayer shooter. The setup is that it's sort of, I think it's like the late, 19th century kind of thing. You're in the Louisiana bayou, you're in the spooky bayou, the kind of the bad monster bayou. And, there's one map, a large map, which is stretches of swampland, pathways, sort of country roads, farmsteads, fisheries, all of the shit things that can be in the countryside, all the worst countryside places, spooky farms, canneries where everything looks sharp, house full of glass, big old pile of rusty nails. Like, it's all of these kinds of, like, things that will give you tetanus. Like, that's where it's set in terms of backwards country horror. And this environment has been sort of possessed by a hell spirit, which has caused zombies and monsters and stuff to arrive. But like, its version of a zombie plague is more like a single demon possessing lots of different corpses, that kind of thing. So it's got that kind of...
So hunt down the source, is that the idea?
Sort of, yeah. So you've got this sort of, so it has this sort of, deep gothic kind of horror thing to it. Like, it's not a viral outbreak or it may takes the form of a plague, but it's something sort of like in the tradition of that kind of Southern Gothic horror. It is because there's some sort of rot of evil at the core of this sort of, rural wilderness. And, you play as a sad cowboy, a sad randomly generated cowboy. That's the best way to describe it. Just a man with a droopy mustache and a hat. Who has a little piece of hell in him. And that little piece of hell allows you to find, clues that will lead you to a boss monster.
That's the most video game thing ever.
So it's kind of interesting because the atmosphere is super important. One of the reasons that it's good is it looks fucking amazing. Like, it really is an extraordinary looking game. It's a Crytek game, so it's a CryEngine game, and it's pushing that engine to its kind of what it can do, which really showing what it can do. The environments look incredible. The sound design is amazing. It uses binaural sound like Hellblade. It has incredible binaural sound. And the monsters are really beautifully designed. I saw Marsh say, I think in one of our chats about it, that like some of its screenshots kind of make you, I think if you don't like multiplayer games or you don't like these kinds of games, you kind of wish, I wish this was a survival horror. It's in terms of fidelity, it's not miles off Resident Evil 7. And it's a multiplayer game with a similar sort of setting. Yeah. Like, it's really does look incredible. And all of the weapons are sort of, Western kind of Winchesters and revolvers. And this was, despite Killing Floor being set in like near future Cockney apocalypse Britain.
No one knows what that was.
Yeah, exactly. The best weapons in Killing Floor were all like the bolt action rifles and like the the really clunky guns, right? It has that. It has the Killing Floor, the world's most gratifying death stapler thing. Like, that works in its favor as well. And all of that stuff's super important for feel and how atmosphere and stuff. But then as a game, what happens is, so you have this big map, but I think it's only 8 players at a time. And you're the kind of the default way to play is you load in with a friend. It's duos. So 4 pairs of people. I think it's 8 total. It's not much more than that. So you can either load them with a friend, you can load them with a stranger, and then you are obviously on the same team, or you can load in solo. And if you load in solo, it's not everyone's solo. It'll just put 2 solo players in a game that is otherwise duos. So the odds are kind of stacked against you, but there are reasons you might want to do that. So, and then the goal in a given match is, by using your dark sight, which is it's a really nicely implemented kind of like dark vision mode where your vision washes out, but you can see glows in the distance, which indicate where clues might be found. Every time you find a clue, it blanks out a big chunk of the map and says the boss isn't here. And then when you find 3 clues, it will pinpoint whichever kind of point of interest the boss is actually in, like which farm it's in and that kind of. There are 2 bosses at the moment. One is called the Butcher, which is big Texas Chainsaw Massacre pighead scary man.
Yeah.
And the other is called the Spider. It's a big spider.
The 2 most original bosses.
Yeah, it's not like, I don't think as horror, it's not mega original. It's just well executed. So it's like the atmosphere is really great and like feels right.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris. The E3 demo, the videos have seen it, but that spider thing, the animation on it is fucking horrendous. Like, it's really terrifying. Like, I've never seen, giant spiders are one of the most cliche villains in video games, but I've never seen.
It's a real good one.
Yeah.
Or bad one.
Yeah, that one, I imagine.
And these bosses, you don't need the clues to find them. You could stumble into the place where they are and be murdered by them. Like, that's, they're just there on the map. When the boss dies, when you fight the boss, when the boss dies, it has to be banished back to hell, which takes about 3 minutes, during which time, its location is revealed to everybody. Because when anyone uses their dark sight then, they see lightning bolts coming down out of the sky at the place where the boss died. So there's no more clues for anybody else.
Yeah.
And then when the boss has been banished, it's on its body are 2 bounties, like some kind of like chunk of its hell stuff.
Cool, more hell stuff.
Which, the goal of the game, to win the game, you take that, at which point you were constantly being struck by lightning.
I'm so glad I took this hell stuff.
In the dark vision. So if anyone who dark visions
I see.
can then, they kind of blind themselves to do it, but they can see the lightning coming down on you. They blind themselves to everything else, which includes all the other monsters on the map. But they can see you. And then your goal is to grab that and then get to, one of 3 randomly placed, extraction points that are around the edges of the map. Which are there from the start of the game. So that's the game basically. I mean, you extract, you get the points, and that's kind of the thing. However, what's kind of neat about it, there's lots of things that I think are neat about it, I have promise. It's not, the reason you do this is, to level up your account and your characters. When you start, you get given $666, the devil's wallet. And you buy a character. There's no, when I say buy, in all the contexts where I'm going to say buy, I don't mean real money. I mean with your in-game resources. So you go to the recruit page and you can spend money on a little lineup of sad cowboys, and you can spend more or less money. So you can spend quite a lot of money for a guy with a good passive trait, which might make him faster, and some good guns. Or you can cheap out and get a guy who has like just a shitty rifle and a machete or something like that. And then when you play as those characters, they level up and you can buy them new gear. So you can go and buy them a lantern or something from the store. Everything you do in a match, contributes XP and money to that character. So, if you just go into a match, even if you just load in solo, if you find a couple of clues, kill a couple of zombies, maybe kill another player, and then extract, even if you extract really early, you take all that with you. So sometimes you might as well leave. Like, there's nothing stopping you just leaving the mission if you, like, particularly if you've gone in with a character that you have some investment in to get them out. Because if you die, that character's gone. And that character, and death is real quick. Like, someone can just shoot you in the head and you're dead. Like, that's it. So, and when you lose a character, half of that character's experience gets dumped into your bloodline, which is your account. So that's your kind of consistent level across all of your characters.
Right.
And the level of your bloodline affects what's available to you in the shop. So there's a kind of consistent progress. Like, after a while, you can buy a cheap character and equip them with good gear because you can get it because you've unlocked it over time. But it's kind of a neat system because it means that, like, so as a competitive game, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much it's going to hold together as like a super competitive experience, but just loading in to kind of experience the environment and the tension and the atmosphere of it. And then having that balance of, like, do you press on or do you try and extract with what you've got so far? And knowing that, everyone else in the mission is facing the same decision is really interesting. I've won one mission. I've only been playing solo. And it was just really interesting experience. It was like 45 minutes. Matches, I think, are capped at an hour, but it was like 45 minutes of just, I picked, cause I've been playing solo and not doing spectacularly well. I'd lost a couple of characters. Then I went in, and you pick which boss you want to hunt and what time of day. And then the rest of it is up to matchmaking.
Want to hunt the hell spider at tea time.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But I found playing at night, the night missions, they're terrifying, but also, like, they're good for solo because you're probably going to be able to stay in the bushes and things. It's definitely a camping game to some extent, but it's kind of that fits the fiction. Stealth is super important, but basically, like, gunshots, the sound design is fucking great, and gunshots can be heard basically across the map. Like, any of the 8 players fire a gun, you can hear it. You can't tell where it came from because the sound travels so far, it might be a not useful distance away in terms of indicating where things are. But the maps are full of, like, ambient sound causing things. So a spooky barn will have like cans hanging from chains from the ceiling, and if you creep into them, they will rattle in a particular way. When you learn what to listen for, that's an indicator there's a player nearby. Because otherwise it doesn't offer you any feedback at all. There's no kill feed. There's nothing like that.
Yeah.
I think there's a system, although I haven't even confirmed this, I think when a player dies, a couple of seconds later, there's a rumble of thunder and sometimes a lightning bolt, because I've been counting them to try and figure out who's left.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like, it really is like super bare bones. But you get like, there are very good crows. It has good, well rendered crows that kind of like gaggle and caw. And then if you walk into them, they take off, and you can see crows leave bushes in the distance and know someone's just moved through there, but it could have been a zombie that just moved through there.
Right.
There are, dogs in cages that will bark at you and keep barking if you disturb them. And so when one time I played with a duo, my duo buddy just turned around to take a machete to a couple of cages full of dogs to shut them up, and it was like genuinely like kind of horrible, but like this is the atmosphere it's going for.
Yeah, sure.
There are half dying, half eaten horses that are like sat in fields, and some of them aren't dead yet, and they'll start screaming when you go close to them, which is horrible, but also like you see a man sort of panic and pull a pistol and fire it at a horse that's just started screaming at him, and then he gets shot by someone else who heard the gunshot. And that's the kind of, no one's done that with a multiplayer FPS in my experience, like the full on, like, this is horrible horror kind of thing. And I thought it was quite effective. The one I've won was like, I thought I'd just go in to creep around a bit and see what happened and probably escape. And then quite early, I bumped into a guy who was facing the wrong way. So I shot him in the back of the head, another player. And then I kept exploring. And then while exploring the spooky farm, I heard a gate open, and it's terrifying. I just cracked my hay bale and I could hear footsteps, and this guy rounded the corner. I just like unloaded my revolver into his chest at point blank range, and he died. But he went down, and his mate was still alive somewhere, because you can tell if someone's been downed because their partner's still alive, or if they die immediately because they're solo. And I couldn't, so I waited. I tried to hide in a toilet, and then I got slightly stuck in the door of the toilet, which is definitely an early access issue. And then I left that place and found another clue, but the clue then revealed that the boss was actually in that farm where I'd encountered that guy. And when I'd killed him, I think he was coming in to help his mate who'd found the boss, because then I went and found the boss, who was the butcher. And I found at the bottom of a ladder leading to a relatively safe attic, the body of another player, which I'm pretty sure was the partner of the guy that I'd killed in the first place. Then I managed to kill the boss basically by kind of kiting it and trying to shoot it from above, and then hiding when it came around the corner and stuff. But that was a really tense experience, because I didn't know if someone was going to hear my shots. Like, I didn't know if people were coming, if anyone else had found the same clues and were on their way. And they did the banishing and hid, like, frightened in the corner while the banishing happened, waiting for other players to show up. Then I took the bounty and ran, and it was only by the time I reached the extraction caravan that I realized that I was the last person alive, and I'd probably been the last person alive for a while. Like, the other players had found and killed each other, people had died to monsters. Because it has, like, a full, like, sort of bestiary of, like, Left 4 Dead style zombie types. It has, like, regular zombies. It has, women full of bees. It has, armored zombies. It also has, Dead Space style limb damage. Speaking of Phoenix Point limb damage, actually, so, hitting things in the legs slows them down, and you can attack arms and things to kind of try and buy yourself a bit of time to escape. There's loads going for it. It's super interesting. Like, I think, whether or not I'd recommend it in its current state is kind of an interesting thing, because I think it's really interesting. And at the moment, you can definitely find a game pretty quickly, but because it's so bleak and so hard, I wonder if it will find, like, a long-term audience. That's my kind of interest in it at the moment, because I think it's super interesting. And, like, I'm kind of into a game that allows you to have gunfights with old-timey pistols while trying to avoid spooking zombies in a spooky bayou. But that's a very specific sell. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the kind of one-size-fits-all murder orienteering that PUBG is.
It sounds amazing. Like, conceptually, it sounds brilliant. really like the idea that if you shoot a player, you've sort of semi-permadeathed the character that they have.
Yeah.
The stakes there are really cool. Like the idea that, it's obviously very hard to find players and kill them, but that really means something. And if you get killed, it really means something. So, those stakes don't exist in typical multiplayer shooters, right? You just go.
Yeah. Well, it was funny, like, so I won that game, right? Got the bounty out, and that was enough to take that character from level 1 to level 10. Like, just, huge bounty on it. Cause there's like, so if you get killed extracting the bounty, for example, you still get quite a lot out of that. It's still worth trying. They've calibrated it to a point where like your account will get quite a lot out of a failed attempt.
Right.
So it's not like all, you know what I mean? It's not punishing to the point where no one does anything for fear of losing their good character.
Sure.
But as soon as I did that, I spent some of that money recruiting another character to mess around with, because I didn't want to go into, like, I'll probably save my level 10 guy for when I go play with a friend or something.
Yeah.
And if I lose him, that sucks, but then again, it's only one mission away from getting it back. Like, it is cool. Like, I wonder how much that'll really put people off, because it's not that punishing, if you know what I mean. Like, you just, ultimately your ability to aim and shoot a gun and be in the right place at the right time is more important than any upgrade that character might have. But there is some sense of like, I have a bit of history with this guy and I don't want him to get shot in the head out of nowhere, so I'm going to be super careful.
Yeah. Got your own little stable of, mooks and guys you actually care about.
Real sad cowboys.
That sounds super interesting. I think as someone who, like, it doesn't tend to be interested in like super hyper competitive FPS scenarios or that kind of thing, a more kind of atmospheric take, really appeals to me. I think I would certainly play that with friends,
I love that idea that sort of the XP is proportional to the challenge, and you can just level up 10 times in like with one bounty.
Yeah.
That's something I always hate it in RPGs in particular, where like my fondest memory of Morrowind was breaking into like a really high level mansion very early on and just stealing something that was worth 68,000 gold. And it was just like, that is just 10 times what I could ever dream to make in my first, 5 hours in this game. And so now I just have this one breastplate. A, it's great and I can just wear it. But also B, if I ever want to buy anything ever, I can put this up for trade and take everything the shopkeeper has, and he will still owe me 10,000 gold.
Yeah. Kingdom Come Deliverance is like that. I break into a place where it's like, it doesn't break the game. It just means that, you're suddenly very advantaged.
There's definitely I like seeing multiplayer used to furnish an experience rather than everything be, super competitive. It doesn't feel like it's designed, it feels like it's designed to furnish a horror experience, which is kind of counterintuitive because I imagine most people who like horror games think of that exclusively as a kind of scripted, well, maybe not scripted fully, but as a kind of authored single player thing, right? And I've always really loved the potential of multiplayer for that. I love the AVP games. Given how much I like Alien Isolation, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of my kind of super generous, 15-year-old self was capable of kind of investing Aliens vs. Predator multiplayer with something like that, where you'd almost, not role play, but you'd almost role, you know what I mean? You kind of wanted to spook other players, right? You wanted to play the alien in a way that was scary.
Yeah, that game totally gave you the tools to ambush in a way that, the alien would frighten people. That game was frightening in multiplayer, as it was in single player.
Yeah. I think, The Hidden in a way feels like the PvP mode of a weird Resident Evil MMO. That's probably the best way to explain it. The permadeath stuff doesn't connect to an RPG system that's quite so robust that it would mean as much to you as losing a character you'd have invested something in other modes.
Yeah, sure.
But it's got scope to expand in that direction. It's just a super interesting idea. It reminds me a lot of, it's got a real, despite, the production values are very, very high, but it has a real, latter day Half-Life 1 mod kind of total conversion feel to it. That sort of, ironically, something like The Hidden, John's, mod project, those kinds of.
Crytek have form for ripping that game off.
Yeah, indeed.
Crysis 3's multiplayer was just The Hidden.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah, true.
And it's cool to see that survive. I've been interested to see how it does. It seems to be doing alright because, you find games fairly quickly in the middle of the day, which is good. And I think it'll only improve and it'll only benefit. So one of the modes that isn't activated yet is, it spawns both bosses, which is an interesting idea that there are two in the map and that'll split the players up. I think it'd be interesting to see what it was like with more players, because at the moment it feels very kind of the first time you meet a player is very life or death. It feels a lot like,
Battlegrounds or something.
Yeah, well, Battlegrounds PUBG is a very, like, high frequency game in terms of how regularly you hit other people and get into a fight.
Yeah.
Particularly as you get a bit better at it. When you're a bit better at it and you tend to survive fights, or you tend to position yourself in the right place for them, like, you can expect to have a couple of firefights in a game. Whereas this, so far for me has felt very, like, do or die. And sometimes, like, I've definitely had characters that I've just lost with nothing I could, you know what I mean? Just, because when someone else gets the drop on you, like, that first bullet to the head, sometimes that's it. That's that character gone. And you have to kind of accept that about it, I think.
Yeah.
Which is people are going to find off-putting. Like, if you want a fair chance of winning every encounter you get into, then it's probably not that game. You do have a fair chance, but it's like, don't get snuck up on from someone in the bushes. Don't accidentally aggro the woman full of bees. Cause it's very obvious when that happens, because other players know to look to where the bees are going. Yeah. That's where you are.
Yeah. It's called
Hive. No, Hive. Sorry, the woman full of bees are called Hives. It's called Hunt Showdown, which isn't a great name.
Is there a the in there anywhere?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just Hunt : Showdown.
Okay.
It does include both of those things. Like
the hunt, the show, the down.
Yeah. Shunt Hoedown. The country dancing horror dance game. Yeah, no, it's good.
You need a dance mat and a friend to push over.
Yeah. It's got me looking forward to, like, Vermintide 2, which is out very soon as well. It's in that kind of bracket of, like, the many mini Left 4 Deads that are kind of spread out across the ether.
Been playing the beta with the PC Gamer chaps this week, and man, they've improved the melee in that game.
That's good.
Super good. And it's really gory and really, really nice. The levels are much better as well. Really like Vermintide.
Really I'm looking forward to it.
It's legitimately good.
One of the best tides.
Yep.
Of all the seas of things I can be swamped with, this is among my favourite.
But it's also tides of topless men with axes in Vermintide 2, because Chaos are legions as well. That's not such a good title for a game.
Man-tide.
Man-tide.
It's good.
Don't aggro a man-tide pod.
Oh, God.
Should we do questions?
Yeah, hell yes.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Marvellous.
All right. So, the first question comes from Glenn, who writes, Dear Cratergeddon and Crowbees, episode 226 about the notorious BOP was immensely enjoyable. Regrettably, my question is not about homing bees or angry octopuses. While listening to the perspectives of Pip, Tom, and Alex to a question about taking breaks from gaming, I began to think about the relationship between game duration and available time. I recently became a first-time dad to a new baby girl. Congratulations. As my life has shifted to this happy occasion, so has my time for playing games. Over the past several months, my list of installed games has migrated from longer experiences to games that primarily feature rewarding experiences in quick, repeatable loops, such as Spelunky, FTL, Heat Signature, XCOM Enemy Within, and Invisible Ink. Have any of you found yourself in similar gaming moods for a particular season of life? If so, what games were on your list? Thank you for your podcast. It is one of the regular highlights of my week. Glenn. Thank you, Glenn.
That's a very good list.
It is a very good list. And it's kind of the list of, we've definitely had the, games I can play in short sessions because I've just had a child, games I can play with, one hand while I'm cradling said child. Those kinds of questions we've had a bunch of different ways. And those tend to be the games we recommend. So
I'm surprised XCOM is in his list as things that he can dip into and out of, because I find XCOM is like 8 hours at a time.
Yeah, and that's one mission.
Yep. Yeah, my missions literally are, because I did a Let's Play at some point, and, you know, they did end up being like an hour or 2 hours sometimes. I find, there's definitely like, there are times in my life when the role of gaming is just going to be to relieve stress, so I don't want to play anything new or anything that's going to challenge my brain in any way. And my go-to for that, is Batman Arkham City, I think.
Good choice.
They're like sort of challenge arenas and that, where I just want to beat up like 100 guys.
Yeah, DMC is my equivalent. I played through DMC multiple times because it's just guaranteed instant satisfaction. The combat system feels so good and so well designed that it's just, you know, quality every time you play it.
I think actually Into the Breach is, going to slot into, that kind of thing for me. And maybe Slay the Spire as well. Both of them I find incredibly addictive. So if there's ever a time when I need to like just take my mind off something, those are both good go-tos, because I know as soon as I start playing, I'll just be 100% engrossed.
Recently, like, I've had a sort of return to games, like, not that I went away for any particular length of time, particularly given what I do for a living, but I definitely had a period where I wasn't playing games. I wasn't losing weekends to games, for example. Like, I definitely almost completely left the opposite of this, which is like deep investment games. And then Subnautica was something that drew me back in. But since then, the sort of tension for me has been balancing, sort of game time against other things I want to do with my free time. And given that I work for myself, I have to make sure I balance that very carefully, because when I'm not working, I'm just unemployed. That's how that works. So there's an element of like, if I have an hour free, what I do with it has become way more important to me than it was when I was salaried. Because when I was salaried, you know, there's always, you know, it feels like there's always more holiday in a way, whereas it feels a bit more precious now. And, that's coincided with a return to Dota, which is kind of my go-to, like, half an hour to an hour to kill thing, because I'll be reliably kind of busy in that time. And I've actually drifted away from PUBG because I didn't necessarily feel like it was always furnishing every half an hour with a kind of valuable thing. I found that, and games that I can get a really meaningful kind of narrative experience out relatively quickly. Hellblade. So we were talking about DMC, another Ninja Theory game from a different kind of angle. Hellblade's been great for that, because it's not mega long, but it's nicely compartmentalized, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's true.
And, sort of that, I guess it's kind of that kind of min-maxing of time has led me to kind of, also led me to games like Hunt, which obviously I already talked about in this episode, but because that is a kind of, intense, very tense, often scary half hour, usually. That's again something I can kind of deploy while I'm taking a break between bouts of work, or sometimes if I'm like having a painting afternoon or a creative writing afternoon, like while I, you know, if I want to take a break while I wait for something to dry, either literally in terms of paint or within my brain, then something like Dota or Hunt is the kind of thing I go to. I think I more regularly now, or, you know, more regularly generally go to short form competitive things rather than like FTL runs like I used to. That said, Into the Breach is very likely to bring me back into the I'll do one run and see where I go way of spending my time. Yeah.
I'm enjoying Monster Hunter at the moment for that. That chunks itself in it really gives you lots of different ways to chunk it up. So, a big serious monster hunt gonna last 50 minutes, and it tells you that's the time limit on this hunt. Can't last longer. Probably gonna probably last about like half an hour to 40 minutes. But I enjoy games increasingly that give you that time framework. Where it's like, yeah, I can spend that amount of time on doing this. And if I've only got like 20 minutes, I can hunt some wildlife, just generic wildlife, which is very easy to do and gets you kind of materials and stuff. So thank you games that just tell us how much time a thing is going to take probably.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, it's not so much short games, it's like session
times,
games.
It's
the kind of thing I found myself gravitating towards as the years have gone on. We haven't talked about this before, but like, it's been so long since, or it feels like it's been so long since I've like lost a summer to a single big RPG, rather than play those RPGs in kind of fits and starts where I can.
Yeah.
Trying to render sessions out of something that's really not designed for it.
Yeah. I've had it happens only occasionally for me now, but Horizon Zero Dawn was one where I really just got so into that.
Yeah, that was my last big time sink as well.
I did go through The Witcher 3 that way as well, just being really into it and enjoying that for a bit. But yeah, and the last time before that was probably Mass Effect, like not Andromeda, but the trilogy. That's like the last thing I got so invested in. That trilogy. I absolutely loved it. I was so into all the characters, and that's a great memories associated with that game. Not a session game though.
No. But, I'm trying to like, I think Tides of Numenera was the last thing that I sort of wanted to sink a lot of time into.
I didn't make it to the end, but I remember getting super engrossed in it for just like about a month.
Yeah. And that's to some extent works as a session game because there's very little that's rote in that game.
Yeah.
It's all kind of interesting. So you can dip in, but that said, it is also a big, I remember when they were previewing that game, or when I was interviewing them about it very, very early on, they talked about a game that was actually pretty short, but very broad, so that you'd not see all of it in a single run, but you'd kind of finish it relatively quickly. And that's kind of not what it turned out to be. Not in a bad way, but it's actually not insubstantially long. Like, it's not as long as Pillars of Eternity or Baldur's Gate 2 or any of the kind of big games in that genre, but it's not a short game.
No.
And I still kind of want, I think, the relatively short CRPG. Like,
but with that density, that's the extraordinary thing about Numenera, is that it had that kind of, just the amount of story in a given, 6 inches square of space in any given map is extraordinary in that game. And that kind of world building that kind of casually does through conversation is so exciting.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I think I just want, I want the CRPG that's basically like one D&D arc in length. Right? If you think about when we did our D&D Christmas special, and that was like one mad afternoon for us and 8 hours of podcasts for everybody else. But there aren't really, there isn't that I can think of. There's no 8-hour Baldur's Gate game, right?
There isn't. Though, recently actually I've been playing Oxenfree, which it's not a game of that level of depth at all, but it is a relatively short game that goes in many different potential directions. And I'm only probably about halfway through it, I think, but I can already see all the places where I've diverged from potential outcomes and kind of alienated characters and stuff like that. And maybe adventure games are great for this. Maybe. Shorter adventure games with many, many different outcomes.
That game does the telltale thing of telling you how many people did the same decision as you at the end, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Our next question is more of a statement, but it's a good statement, so I shall read it out. Because that's how this works. And it's from Chris, who writes, "This week, Oddwood Frenry and I spent much of the week working on Pico 8 games in the #GameDeg.
Don't go there.
Deg your games there.
Good job, game developers. In the #GameDev channel on the Crate and Crowbar Discord. This was for the Fantasy Console Game Jam. I ended up making a roguelike heavily inspired by the works of Michael Bro called Bro-like Turbro. And Oddwood created an incredibly fun and unique game about sailing and navigating a ship using the technology of the 1600s. It was Oddwood's first game, and it's incredibly fun and unique. That game is called Shipwreck, with a apostrophe that is a pun that I don't understand.
Oh my
because
God.
I've had a couple of drinks. Tom, do you understand it?
No. Where's the apostrophe?
At the end.
No, then.
Links in the show notes, everybody. Sometimes written down puns don't work so good when spoke by a drunk man. Who knew? Anyway, she continues, I found the CNC Game Dev Discord channel has been a really positive place to talk about development and technology online. There are a bunch of friendly people who are usually there hanging out, talking about games, from a couple of professional game devs, some developers who make games as a hobby, and some people learning development to make games. If you're looking for a positive place to explore games, I highly recommend it. That's from Chris, who I have met in real life and who was very nice, and I believe gave me a card on my birthday.
No.
I know.
That's really nice.
Which is just more evidence that our community is lovely. So, I mean, in many ways, this was a plug disguising itself as an email, but our Discord community, which you can find via a link on our website, crateandcrowbar.com, is a wonderful place to talk about all kinds of games and hobby-related things.
It's lovely.
And it's just nice to see people kind of
Enjoy
like,
it.
I don't stop in on game dev very often. I kind of, not in the, this will sound terrible, the thing I'm about to say, but sometimes forget that it's there. Because there are aspects, because I tend to hover around, episode discussion and words and, role models, which is the miniatures painting kind of community. It's great that we're at the point now where lots of different things are happening in different places. So this thing that we ostensibly are responsible for, not really.
I dip into game dev every now and then. I don't post there much. I just sort of see what people are up to. And I also dip into roguelikes very often because a huge proportion of my favorite games are roguelikes. Our roguelikes channel is a great place for Spelunky discussion. We're talking about Spelunky. People talk about Spelunky there every single day. And I'm always there. For a long time I was there hoping they were talking about Slay the Spire. And it was mentioned a couple of times, but it didn't really spark much discussion. People went back to Spelunky pretty fast. And so Into the Breach is my next big hope for like to take over the roguelikes channel.
Nothing.
Please talk about the roguelikes I'm playing. I love Spelunky, but I've stopped playing it. Although actually, last time I checked there, like the latest message was about Spelunky, and I thought, oh, Spelunky. And then I read the message, like, holy shit. Person was talking about he threw a sticky bomb out, and then a caveman picked up the sticky bomb, and then the caveman ran into a tiki trap. The spikes on the tiki trap stabbed the caveman, and the knockback flew the caveman into the player with the sticky bomb still attached to him, so it got killed by the sticky bomb. Holy shit, Spelunky's great.
Yeah, Spelunky hangs over roguelikes in a similar way that Games Workshop hangs over role models. Like, it's kind of hard to escape the gravitational pull, but one day it will happen.
I'm a terrible lurker on these forums, and on most of those, there's a really nice Monster Hunter one as well. Lots of good Monster Hunter chat on there. It's good on the internet in that place.
It's good on the internet. Tom Senior approves.
In that specific, in that very particular place.
In that very specific place. We should answer a question rather than just talk about how great Discord is.
True.
Willie writes, Dear Command and Conquer, since you said I won't send you any questions, I will, just to prove you wrong. Did you... Is this the thing I missed?
Last week we only had one question to read out, so we might have said something about it.
Okay.
I don't remember what we said, but...
If you write in and challenge us like that, so you previously had challenged us to not answer a question, it probably works, because it's definitely worked.
Yeah, unfortunately this has worked. This is not this is not a sign for the future that this is always the way to get your question answered, but nonetheless it has worked, so congratulations, Willie. Willie writes, I always enjoy people talking in accents in media, yet cringe internally when a friend makes a typical mistake while speaking English. What are your favourite accents in games? Psychonauts comes to mind, where most of the characters whose brains you enter also have distinct accents like German agent Sasha 9 or French Fred Bonaparte. Alles gut, Willie from Germany.
The thing that amused me enormously about the Hitman episodic series was that, you know, it was a constant kind of thorn on the side of the series that everywhere you went, it was just a bunch of Americans. And it was kind of the same Americans. I think there was one Australian actor as well. And that it would just be like, you're in Marrakesh and everyone's talking American, and you're in Italy, everyone's talking American. And they finally did an episode that's actually in America, and they hired a load of British actors. Like, half the people at that level are British. I don't know why.
Oh no.
I had this thought while playing Hellblade, which I appreciate I talked to you about already, and genuinely I love. Like, I came to it came out mid last year, and I came to it right at the end of the year, basically in time before our Game of the Year discussions, and then it hit me like really quickly that like, I love Ninja Theory stuff anyway. And I love DMC, and I didn't know if it was, but I think it was Hellblade was the point where it's like, I like everything the studio does. Like, there's something about the way they direct action and want to tell stories and try to tell stories through action and action play and those kinds of things that really, really resonates with me. And the one small kind of directorial creative detail in Hellblade that I'm not sure about is the accents. And it's a really small thing, but it's a game that uses actors in a really interesting way. And I appreciate this question was about times we liked accents in games, and all we're going to talk about is times we didn't.
Yep.
But, and it's not even the thing, so the thing that is, so the Hellblade situation is interesting, because Hellblade uses a mixture of, mocapped, game acting alongside actual live action. Because it overlays a heavily distorted but real footage of real actors onto the play. And sometimes those characters are interacting with, digital characters. And that actually works really well. The thing that I found the most consistently discordant actually was the accents of the actors. The obvious example of this, and actually I think, and it's not an issue at all, is the lead actress in Hellblade, Melina Jurgens, is German, and she speaks with a German accent. And actually I didn't find that didn't bother me at all. She's playing a Celt, I think, from Orkney, but it doesn't really affect it at all. Nor the other predominant speaking character is a Scots storyteller called Druth, who speaks with a Scottish accent, and that worked really well as well. The one that bothers me is a character called Tillian, who shows up quite a lot through the second half of the game, and is a significant character in Senua's story. And the performance is really good, but it's delivered with, there's a sort of, it's not quite RP, it's not like received pronunciation, but there's a way of delivering drama with an English accent that I've heard a lot in my life, like over the course of multiple kind of worthy TV shows and theatre specifically, where it's somewhere like neutral English.
Is it the Mark Strong Space Marine accent?
No, because the Mark Strong Space Marine accent is the I'm playing a Roman in I Claudius accent. They're the same accent.
Like it's like Branagh.
It's the Shakespeare's Romans kind of voice, right?
Does Mark Strong do a lot of Space Marines?
He did one very well.
He did.
In which game?
Space Marine.
Space Marine.
Okay. That's the one.
He's a very good Space Marine.
He's the strongest Mark.
I like him in general as an actor.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that. There's, so RP being received pronunciation being like, traditional sort of Shakespearean theatrical Britishness, which you might have found in Hollywood films of a certain era or whatever. If that's not what I'm talking about, there's almost like a new sort of neutral delivery that I find really distracting. Mm-hmm. And it's because it sounds very modern, I think. And sorry, I'm kind of talking around this point a little bit, but there's, I find the same thing in Dear Esther, actually, which also has a kind of quite neutrally delivered. And when I say neutral, I don't mean lacking emotion or lacking kind of emotive thrust, but that you can't place the speaker, which I think is sort of a common thread of these accents I actually have a problem with somewhat. It's like you've gone for the quality of the voice and the sound and the resonance of the voice over the kind of specificity of it. Whereas weirdly, when the accents are more specific, as with Senua being kind of inexplicably German, I don't mind as much. And that is something that, I started to, I think about more and more.
I have an answer to this, which is, Bennett Foddy in Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, which I haven't even played much, but it is just Bennett Foddy talking, and he is Australian, so he sounds Australian. Okay. Like, you can't get away from it. And, that's one of the few accents I can say for sure is authentic.
That's what I mean. You saved me from the kind of the roundaboutness of this point. But the point is that, like, natural elocution in an accent is actually quite pleasant to listen to when it's understandable, which it more often than not is. And I've definitely picked up on this in a bunch of different, maybe I'm sensitive to it as an English person, that when you hear a kind of unnaturally well elocuted English accent in a game, which Tillian in Hellblade stands out to me as, and actually the narrator in Dear Esther stands to me out as, even though it's a good performance otherwise, it takes me out of it in a way that just dumping any other kind of natural spoken accent in there wouldn't.
Where does the narrator of the Stanley Parable stand on that spectrum?
Oh, he's great.
He's great. I think that's fine because that's more like that is explicitly a performance.
Yeah,
actually.
it's kind of a similar type of thing. I think perhaps you're describing, like maybe.
I think so.
The role I think calls for a very
right?
You want it to be
like that,
showy and performancy and
over.
That is explicitly like a narrator role, right? Like he actually does a narrator voice.
But is that
like,
the type of delivery you're talking about?
Not really. Just like
Kevin Brighting.
Yeah,
I think is the name of the actor in Stanley Parable.
The brightest Kevin, the strongest Mark. Which is I think at the beginning of the Green Lantern Oath. No, I guess what I'm talking about, which this is going to be agony to anyone who doesn't, there's a particular sort of, neutral kind of almost like BBC English that gets employed in the pursuit of drama specifically. Like the Stanley Parable example of a narrator who's explicitly narrating, right? It's kind of larger than life and it's talking directly to the player. It's not emoting for the benefit of another character. In the case of Dear Esther, the speaker is actually speaking to somebody who isn't you implicitly. They're letters or they are so diary entries to Esther. Or in Hellblade, all of the dialogue is remembered speech. So it's things that have been said to Senua at different points. And they're sort of remembered as if they were natural at the time. And they're quite, and simply those ones strike me as quite performance-y in a way that doesn't quite work. And I almost wish that they had decided on like a single consistent accent or mode of delivery for all of the principal characters, simply to tie them together as part of the community they're supposed to belong to, so that it would kind of hold better.
Is there a name for the accent that sort of early Hollywood actors had?
Oh yeah,
because it's like American, but it's almost a little bit British.
Yeah, it's got a cut glass quality to it.
Yeah, it's over enunciated.
I don't know if that qualifies as a form of RP.
It definitely straddles the two. It's weird, like even the modern, you know, if you know people who've gone over to America who were British, they pick up certain, like it's amazing how their accent changes, the way they talk change. And I like listen to PJ Harvey, for example, do an interview.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, you know, existed in both England and America, and her accent is a very interesting amalgamation of both that sounds kind of unnatural because you just probably don't hear many people speaking like that. But it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, my little answer to this question. Not an accent thing, but I love that, in XCOM 2 they added, and in fact, actually, not before XCOM 2 actually, they added the ability to actually, have your soldiers speak in their national tongues.
Yeah.
And I really would love to hear more, you know, native languages spoken in my games. Or I want to hear people from, you know, Germany speaking German with subtitles. And I want to hear people talking Spanish with subtitles.
I love, by the time I enabled that option, I'd heard all the standard lines enough times that now when I hear them in a foreign language, I know exactly what they're saying. Like, I can tell from your tone of voice, you're saying, I just killed a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. I'd really like that. And I'd love to hear more languages in my games. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like games to, like, I think maybe the other example of this, maybe to get around to what I'm saying it from a different angle, is that, so for example, the traditional fantasy thing is like, you know, dwarves are Scottish, for example, or dwarves are from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Orcs are from south of the river.
Orcs from Yorkshire.
Yorks.
And there's definitely a tendency to, like, not ground player characters in a particular place. Like, player characters tend to be quite neutrally
I wonder about this about Geralt.
Yeah.
Where the hell is Geralt from?
Yeah, exactly.
He's got an amazing voice.
Gruffville.
Yeah, and so I guess I've definitely...
Oh, yeah. Elias Dufexis is, Adam Jensen. I love his, I don't know if you call it an accent, but just his whole thing.
Yeah.
Whatever the fuck he's doing with his voice, I love it.
The quarry he's from.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, so I think this is the thing, like, and this is a genuine, so as far as I can tell, I'm definitely going out on a limb here with this, and I haven't been for a while, but like, games, I think, have a history of picking their voices for the quality of the voice rather than the way that voice integrates with the world of the game. I think that's basically everything that I'm talking about here. It kind of comes down to that. Like, it's the way, like, yeah, you're right. Geralt has an amazing sounding voice. Is that kind of, you know, immersively right for the person in the situation? Kind of yes, kind of no.
For his character, it happens to be, but I could see how it can go wrong.
Yeah, and like,
I always feel like it's a little bit put on. It always feels like someone trying to sound tough more than someone who really is tough.
Yeah. And that's the tough thing with games because you have to sell so much through the voice. And
that's Jensen as well, though, isn't it?
Well, so I actually, I didn't have anything to back it up at the time. I thought, like, for some reason when Adam Jensen speaks, it doesn't sound like a put on voice. And when Geralt speaks, it does. And then I decided, I'm going to test this theory. I'm going to Google both these voice actors and find out what their real voice looks like. Sounds like. Elias Dufexis really does speak like that. That is his voice. Right. And the Witcher guy does not speak like that.
You can tell. I genuinely think you can tell. Like,
have you ever seen Elias Dufexis in a show? He was in Star Trek Discovery.
He's in The Expanse.
Yeah.
Is he? Is he in season 2?
He doesn't look like
I've only season 2. He was in another sci-fi show I watched, and he's like a sort of meek nerd in that. And then as soon as he opens his mouth, you're like, oh my god, wow.
Adam Jensen's inside the nerd.
But yeah, that's his voice.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, like, I think that's, like, there's, definitely, like, you can do this with the Shepherds, the original Mass Effect Shepherds. Like, I think one of the reasons that people love,
Jennifer
Hale's performance as Shepard so much is that actually, weirdly, if you pick all the renegade options as female Shepard, she becomes more southern. She gets, like, there's more of a southern American twang to her voice. The more renegade you go, like, the more like Lone Star State, the icon you pick, the kind of more Texan she becomes over time. And I think because it's grounded a little bit better, whereas Mark Mayer's male Shepard doesn't really do that. It's a very straight down the middle, like, as neutral as possible voice. and doesn't emote as much into the kind of extremes of Paragon or Renegade, with the exception of the few lines in Mass Effect 2 where he becomes inexplicably and extremely Canadian. Which I find kind of helpful. It's our ground shepherd. He's from Canada.
Makes sense now.
Yeah, I think I'd like more regional accents. Basically just, you know, I don't know, Scouse protagonist for the next BioWare game. That'd be great. Go with that. Our next question comes from Joshua, who writes, which games bear the barest bears? Ursine regards. Grizzly. Sorry if you wanted to be just Grizzly and not the first name I said. Well, shit.
I've already forgotten it, so.
Bears. Question mark.
Bearist spelt how?
B-E, open bracket, A-R-E, close bracket, S-T.
What?
I think it's the option there.
So the two options provided by the parentheses are the word best and the word
bears.
Bar, and the word are. So so I would say both best and most existentially pure. Having the quality of being, because the parenthesis has let's do some reading here. Like the parenthesis has the effect of separating the word be from the word are. And if you think about it.
Hey, mildly on topic, you remember Big Lebowski, the old like cowboy looking dude in the bar? He says, you know, some days you eat the bar and sometimes the bar eats you. And I was always like, why is the bar eating you? He's just saying bear, but apparently in certain southern regions, like it's a dialect, you just say it bar. Right. You just say bear as bar.
I thought he said
so that mysterious line is deciphered now. He's saying bear. Just in his own little way.
Sitting at a bar
he is sitting at a bar, but the bar doesn't eat anyone. And you can't eat the bar.
This might be another complete, this might be complete bollocks, the thing I'm about to say, but let's go with it. Do you know why Beowulf's called Beowulf? As in the Old English kind of.
Is it to do with bears?
It is, yeah.
From context?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I find this fascinating. If this is wrong, someone's going to definitely write in and tell me. So.
It's not to do with wolves.
No. Well, it is and isn't. So, the reason is that, Beowulf literally means the wolf of the bees. And wolf in Old English is sort of, alludes to consumption, like eating, kind of consuming ravenous,
we still use that,
hungry
right?
like a wolf.
I wolfed it down.
Yeah, wolfed it down. So what it means is the one that eats the bees, really.
Okay.
And, the way I ended up learning this is that's because, the word for bear was quite a bit taboo. Like, you know, I guess if you say it too many times, a bear will arrive, like Candyman.
Bear. Oh shit.
You've done it now, Tom. And so Beowulf is a way of alluding to the strength and profile of a bear without saying it. There you go. There's a bear
said three times while looking at a tree real close.
That might be complete bollocks, but
while eating salmon.
It sounds interesting.
Why?
I think everyone who's had a family dog has seen the dog eat a bee, though. And it is disastrous. I remember like our golden retriever just coming in with a fat face. And we're like, what's happened to that animal?
The eater of bees was a bear. Bears eat bees. Okay.
Yeah. That's a way of alluding to bees. It was like saying like the little boy's room.
Bears.
Okay.
When you mean toilet.
Anyway, on the bear question.
Is that why bears are called bears? Because they're like bee eaters. They just took out some letters from bee eaters and made
guess
bears.
So, maybe. Maybe we secretly don't know what the word for bear actually is. Tom, you were going to say something about video games.
Yeah. I was going to say that
Let's hope.
The best bears are in Skyrim.
Yeah.
And, but Oblivion's bears were shit.
Because they are like bosses.
That's your
in Skyrim,
Bethesda.
Bethesda theory, that's it.
I remember definitely in Skyrim, like just seeing a bear from like 100 feet and just being like,
terrifying.
fucking right!
Yeah. They're amazing. But do you remember the bears from Oblivion?
No.
They're just tiny little fucking wombat things.
Which maybe is the point, yeah.
But they chase you forever and do horrendous damage. They do the damage. They have the stamina of a real bear.
No. I have a good memory of bears.
And they go, and they don't sound like bears. Like that doesn't sound like a bear.
Actually, not far off. Bears make very underwhelming noises.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did have one good moment with bears in Oblivion where as a Dark Brotherhood contract, I had to assassinate somebody, and it's like, oh, he's traveling from this town to this town, and he's allergic to honey. So if you can sneak some mead into his inventory, maybe he will eventually drink it and then, like, poison himself because he's allergic to the honey in the mead.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'll buy some mead, and I trotted out to where he was, like, between the two towns he was riding between, and I followed the marker, and I got to the marker, and there's just like a dead horse on the track, and then there's a corpse in the bushes over there, and then there's a bear running away from it. My job is done. Collect this contract. No poisoning necessary.
Who's allergic to honey?
I don't know, probably some people.
Okay. I'll accept that.
Our final question comes from Stephen, who writes, Dear CNC, I've been playing Super Hexagon on and off for a year now. Often without thought, I find the game running, and the arduous task of attempting to get all 6 achievements suddenly is the only thought in my brain. I only have the last achievement to I'm going to start that sentence again. I only have the last achievement to obtain now, but it feels slightly outside my skill level. After 15 hours, there's no enjoyment left for me. This may be my white whale, but I can't give it up till it's done. Do you have a game that you are not certain if you like anymore, but you can't seem to stop going back to for some reason? Keep up the amazing podding, Stephen from Edinburgh.
I don't have that exactly, but on the subject of achievements and trying to get them all, I never do. But Into the Breach has a special reward for getting all the achievements, and it's a big deal. It's not a spoiler, because if you look at the squad menu, it says on there what it is. But maybe I won't say it. So there's 2 different things in Into the Breach I can tell are secrets, but I don't know what either of them are. I've never found them, so I can't spoil them for you, even if I wanted to. And for a long time, I thought they were both the same thing. I thought it was like, if you get all the achievements, then you unlock the secret thing, and that also gets you this other thing. But I've just done some maths on, like, the secret thing you unlock, you need 25 points to do it. Oh.
Watching Tom Francis thinking live.
I guess I've spent, like, every time you unlock an achievement in Into the Breach, you get a coin, and coins can be spent to unlock new squads. I have unlocked all of the standard squads, the 8 squads, and then there are 2 others that like, random squad and custom squad. I have access to both those as well, and the last thing left to do is unlock this other thing that costs 25 achievement points. And I looked at all the achievements I don't have, and added up all the points I could get, and it's exactly the number I would need for that. So I need to get every single achievement to unlock the secret. But one of the other achievements is for finding a secret. I can tell from the silhouette and the name of the achievement, it's like, there's this secret thing that happens. I don't know how to trigger it, but something, a sort of Easter eggy type thing happens. And previously I thought, oh, that's when you get, that's if you get all the other achievements and you spend this money. But no, you need that achievement in order to get the other coins to spend this thing. And yeah, it at least must be possible to get this secret achievement, before spending these coins to get this secret thing, because otherwise I'm screwed. Otherwise I can never get it. But now I realize if I didn't unlock all the squads, if I'd left one of those squads off, I would have a better chance of getting enough coins for the secret thing. Because I need 25 coins. The only way to get 25 coins in my situation is to get every single achievement in the game.
Sounds like some sort of pyramid scheme. You're going to
yeah, I never normally do this. And it's almost all stuff I am happy to do. There's a load of like, a lot of it's like, be this good at the game, or play the game for long enough, get this many victories, win with every squad, that kind of stuff. And then there's just a couple that are like, to get this, I need to start a run with the intent of getting this. Like the one about destroying time pods. Like, I would never normally do that. I have to just start a run to do that. And they're not difficulty restricted, so you can play on easy and do them. And that's the thing that's like, well, I can do it, but it's just time. Like, that's not hard to do. It's just, I have to play on easy so that I can do it easily. But I don't want to play on easy because it's not as fun on easy. And if I try on medium, I won't be able to do it because I'll just fail the game in the attempt.
But are you sure that, like, if you unlocked all the achievements, that it would unlock something significant in the game, like really significant?
Yeah. It says on the menu, so I can tell you, it's a squad. It's a new squad.
There's
a whole new squad.
Is it Bear Squad?
I don't know what it is. It just says Secret Squad.
It's Bear Squad.
And I'm like,
it's all 5 Power Rangers.
I'm on a testers channel where like all people who play the game to hell and back, talking, and they all talk about this Secret Squad, but none of them have ever said what it is, and I really respect them for that. Okay. Like, this is it would be a big spoiler to say what it is. I don't know what it is at all.
Is it 3 spaceships from FTL?
I'm really glad I don't know what it is. And they've never said. And they've talked about like really in-depth balance stuff about how the secret squad, takes a while to ramp up, but it's hard early on, but then it's really powerful later on. And they've never said anything about what it is or what it does. And that's really cool.
That's kind of cool, but I'm going to cheat to get that's cool. I'm not going to unlock every single achievement in the game, probably. And to answer the question, I've never 100%ed anything in terms of achievements, and I never will. Just simply because most games just put bullshit, targets to hit for that sort of thing. The worst of which is like your stupid feather challenges in old Assassin's Creed games, where you'd have to run around picking up feathers or infinite collectibles.
I 100%ed Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood and Revelations.
Not quite at the
Why?
Did it unlock a squad?
You get a cool armor in all of them.
I like armor in those games.
Yeah. Why though? Trying to think if there's a particular white whale. Like, I guess the obvious answer for me is Dota's a total white whale, because it's like, it's a game I play a lot of that frequently makes me sad.
Does it have achievements?
No, it's not about chasing achievements so much as chasing mastery, I guess.
Presumably it does have achievements of some kind, right? Does it?
Yeah, but they're like tutorial related, I think.
Okay, so you get them all trivially.
Yeah, like, actually, I think once upon a time, Dota had an achievement for like eating 1,000 trees. And so you'd sometimes just get people just like munching.
That is an achievement. I'll go along with that.
Munching their way through a game in pursuit of that Steam achievement for some reason. But like, no, I don't think it really does anymore. No, I mean in terms of like white whales, right? Like mastery of that game is the ultimate white whale because it's complete nonsense. But no, otherwise I think it's been a while since, like, I played a lot of Super Hexagon. Talking about the game this question's actually about, like, I played a lot of Super Hexagon 5 years ago. But it didn't stick. Like, it's been a while. Like, Devil Daggers might have been the last one, like the last game like that really, like, I would load up constantly to try and do better at. It's been a while since I've been grabbed by a kind of impossible score challenge or something like that.
Most achievements are just badges, though. And so, my favourite achievements tend to be just jokes that pop up. I keep the achievement pop-ups on Steam because, like, if there's a funny gag associated with a thing you've just done in the game, that's a really nice little nod from the developer. It's just like a little, salute that's like, yeah, good job. You've done a funny thing with this game system. But they don't tend to normally reward you. Like, I mean, what you described, John, sounds amazing. The idea that if you do complete a game, you get a squad that lets you play the game completely differently.
Yeah, I like unlocking stuff, but getting every achievement is a very high bar, and it means that even if, like, there's always going to be a bunch of achievements that you just don't want to do. You're not interested in it, and you just have to do them if you want this thing.
That's the nature of Moby Dick, Tom. You don't get to choose. It's not an optional whale.
I'd like to choose the yellow whale or the blue whale.
Goodbye, Stephen.
Weirdly sad end to this podcast.
That is all of the questions we've got time for. If you'd like to send us a question for future episodes of the Crate and Crowbar, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at Crate and Crowbar. You can, as already mentioned on this podcast, hang out with our Discord community on Discord. You'll find the link for our Discord channel on our website at crateandcrowbar.com. As ever, the Crate and Crowbar and all of its spin-offs are supported by our Patreon, which you can find more details of at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. Your much appreciated weekly pledges go towards everything we do, which is rad. Speaking about everything else we do, appreciate that. So Chris, have had a couple of weeks of unavailability due to some unforeseen circumstances recently, and as a result, some things like Little Grey Cells, Bloodborne, and Miniatures Monthly have all basically suffered minor or major setbacks because of that. We will get back on those various horses at our earliest equine convenience. So yeah, apologize for the wait, particularly for more Bloodborne, because I appreciate it's been a little while since Tom and I exhausted the last of our most recent sessions.
We're going to beat it, Chris. We're going to do it.
We are going to finish it. We're going to start getting eaten by spiders, snakes, and doctors and win it. win the game. But nonetheless, so yeah, apologies for the delay. Thank you so much for your support. So I'd clarify how it's happening. In terms of bonus Crate and Crowbar stuff, I believe it was mentioned in the last episode, but we will be recording a live episode of the podcast at EGX Rezzed in London's Tobacco Dock on the 14th of April. That's the Saturday of Rezzed at 4:30 p.m. The confirmed lineup is, I believe, myself, Tom Francis, and Graham, a voice from the past, with guests to be confirmed. You do need a ticket for the Saturday at Rezzed to attend. Obviously that gets you access to the whole show and all the games and things that are on show at the show, where they show the games. And then after our slot and the schedule lasts from 4:30 till the end of the show, at which point we're going to the pub. So that should be pretty good.
Nice.
I think that's all there is to say about that for now. If you'd like to follow us as individuals, I'm on Twitter at Thurston, which is CTHURSTEN. Tom Senior is
at PCG Ludo Eludio.
I am at Pentadact, PENTADACT.
Thanks for listening, everybody.